Welcome to my audio commentary of a 1986 family vacation to EPCOT Center. And we're starting right away with the Living Seas. You saw the original entrance there, and now we are watching a clip from the movie The Seas, which of course had its "and it rained and rained and rained and rained" portion that we all know so well. And the Living Seas Pavilion had just opened at this time. It was not something that had been around a while. And coming in June of 1986, this was basically brand new. We didn't know what we were going to experience at all. And now we're on the Sea Calves, which of course does not have Nemo in any way. And that's kind of, as we look now at the pavilion itself, that's the big difference. A lot of what's here is similar to what's currently in place, but there's no Turtle Talk with Crush, of course, no Nemo on the Sea Calves, which obviously is very different. They don't have any of the dark ride scenes. But as a kid, I really enjoyed the Living Seas, especially the hydrolators, and I think it's just okay now. But now we're outside in front of World of Motion. You can see there is a line outside. I like to show that just for people who think that there was no one at EPCOT Center, though I know it wasn't as big a hit as Disney wanted. Now we're going up the ramp of World of Motion. You see a quick shot there of Horizons and Universe of Energy. And then, of course, the shot where I took more pictures than almost anywhere else as a kid, which is, of course, this image of Spaceship Earth coming from the ramp going up World of Motion. And now we are inside the pavilion, and this pavilion is really hard to shoot. Something like Horizons, where it's all in front of you, not that hard, even for an amateur videographer. For this, it's like you can't capture it. It's dark. The colors don't show up very well. And yes, you do get a bit of a shot here of course, the giant first traffic jam with so many animatronics and sets and everything all in place. And I really enjoyed this attraction. This was one of my favorites. And when I think about the idea that people say that Epcot was really boring, World of Motion, for me, doesn't go that way at all. It's more similar to something like Pirates of the Caribbean in that way. And of course, you're hearing the song "It's Fun to Be Free" by Buddy Baker and Exitencio. And Gary Owen's narration, of course. There's just a lot of fun to this pavilion. And I wish there were better videos out there. It's just hard to shoot, even for people that are better at it. And of course, they have a quick shot here of the cars that we loved to get inside when I was a kid. But now we're moving on to Horizons. This was my favorite attraction when I was a kid, and actually more even now looking back, because it just represents everything that I loved about EPCOT Center and still enjoy about certain parts of EPCOT today. We are in the Tomorrow's Windows setup, and just look at the backdrop there, and look at how well it fits with the sets and how well everything flows together. It's just such a classic attraction, and this is the iconic smell of oranges scene, where the orange smell, I kid you not, super strong, much stronger than something you might smell today in whether PhilharMagic or especially Soarin' is the best example. This was a stronger smell, and it really stuck with you and was super pleasant. And just look at all the detail with the sets here. And you have here the kid who wants ice cream. Sorry, he's only going to get cake. And there's a shot of Tom Fitzgerald, who is still with Walt Disney Imagineering, was one of the young writers on this pavilion along with George McGinnis, played such a key role. And he jumped in to be the Beach Boy, who was always late. And Tom Fitzgerald doesn't always get known for doing, he's made some questionable decisions as a leader in Imagineering, still involved now with Epcot today. But his contributions to Horizons, are always something that he can be proud of. Here is the space scene with the music cue, space playing in the background. Feels just so epic, really cool. And now we are choosing our own ending. I mentioned George McGinnis had a brilliant idea for how to make this work. And you've got the space choice is the one we made. I can't remember. I used to always love sea, but space, not a bad choice. At least we didn't choose desert. but we are closing out our journey through Horizons here and heading over to the other side of Epcot's Future World with the Land Pavilion, where the balloon still moved in the lobby. I know this look is totally early 80s, may not fit now, but I still love it. And I especially enjoy the fountain you can see down there below. Jim Sarno designed. I talked to Jim last year in the summer on the podcast. Very cool, nice guy. Talked all about what it was like to design that fountain, which is no longer there, unfortunately, with Sunshine Seasons being more of a large cafeteria feeling to it. And now we have boarded. Listen to the land. As you can hear, there is an on-ride narrator, live person, which I, as a kid, found kind of boring. I will say I love living with the land now. One of my favorite attractions. Part of that, I think, is we've lost so much at Epcot. The things we just saw, like Horizons and World of Motion, of course, are gone. So having the chance to have this boat ride still be there, and of course now you can watch the narrator make a mistake, which is always fun if you pay attention. And of course there is some squash, and this pavilion doesn't look that different from how it looked then today. And even so, I feel like they've done a very good job making small updates that have enhanced what it is. And one of them is actually not having a live narrator. And now, of course, one thing that I miss is the theme song, Listen to the Land by Robert Moline, that finished the attraction so well and stuck in your head, still on so many soundtrack albums. I wish there was a way they could still incorporate it today. So let's move on to Journey to Imagination, presented by Kodak at the time. And let's go hang out with Dreamfinder inside the pavilion as we head to the original big scene on the turntable, Dreamfinder and Figment. I talked to Tom K. Morris a few times, and he mentioned about all the turntables and how it worked and just how complicated it was. And my brain, just while going on this when I was younger, had never really considered the fact that there are a bunch of turntables that all connect, so that basically I'm seeing this Dreamfinder and Figment, a few cars back are seeing the one behind, and then they continually exit and enter. So it helps so much with capacity, which is one reason why this attraction never seemed super crowded, is because the capacity was so good where things just flowed right through it. But it's super complicated how that even worked. But I love this opening scene with them singing One Little Spark, Sherman Brothers, which we have a variation on that in the current edition, though it's not as strong, though that is the best scene in the attraction. But now Dreamfinder is scaring me a little bit, which I don't really appreciate, but that's okay. We're out of here now. Heading to Spaceship Earth just for a very short time on this trip. This is the Walter Cronkite version of Spaceship Earth. You have an early computer there. This is kind of the area where we had the computer scene, and also the moon landing would be around here too coming up. And that is the shot of AT&T that is always shown in old souvenir books. And we have a very quick shot there of Tomorrow's Child. You can barely even hear it. And now we're on to another Jim Sarno creation, Smart One. Of course, the small robot in the Communicore. And now if you look to your right, you can get a glimpse of 10-year-old Dan. There I am with my fancy, stylish red shirt and red shorts, standing next to my brother with his blue jacket. And he is talking with Smart One, doing trivia. I haven't really put a lot of family into this videos. The goal for me is really to present the attractions themselves, especially ones we don't have anymore, but just what it was like to visit the parks in an earlier year, in this case 1986. And this is one of the real gems. You can see behind there was actually the roller coaster, which I like to make even though it was impossible. So this shot of Fountain of Nations is a bit of a cheat because it was nighttime, but it fits alongside Communicore. And now we're back to daytime with El Rio del Tiempo, the original boat ride in the Mexico Pavilion. I appreciate this a lot more now, kind of like living with the land, than I did when I was a kid. But in this case, it's been changed to the Grand Fiesta Tour. I love some of these early film shots of just kind of setting the stage for the look at Mexican culture. And now we have the more It's a Small World type scenes where some of these are still in place in Grand Fiesta Tour. Of course, the song that was done by Armando Corral with the music and Exitencio for the lyrics no longer plays. Just a really vibrant scene with a lot happening. Of course, you see the piñata there. That is actually now Donald Duck right there. So that's kind of an interesting change that they've made a bit of a switch from an earlier scene that was in place on El Rio del Tiempo. And of course, here is the big celebration with the fireworks that is not currently in place anymore. I want to say this might be where the performance now is, but I'm not sure of that. We're definitely nearing the end, and the Three Caballeros ending looks very different, though I do appreciate the animatronics that are there now. It's a cool ride. I miss it. Even though I do like what's there, I think it was truly something special. And now we're going to spend a little time at the China Pavilion. Here is the Temple of Heaven, the replica of that structure from Beijing, which is kind of the entryway to lead you into where you see wonders of China at the time, the Circle Vision 360 film. I want to make a quick pitch for the new book, Polishing the Dragons, Making Wonders of China by Jeff Blythe, who was actually my guest on the podcast yesterday that came out. He was the director of that film, and his book, which goes all behind the scenes, is awesome. But now I don't want to interrupt this very exciting show, which is a puppet show in the Germany Pavilion presenting Hansel and Gretel, which this is an example of some of the early types of entertainment that you would see at EPCOT. And these puppets, I've been told on Twitter, are by Bill Lorenzen, and it's just a nice little show that connects a bit to the German culture. There were even fewer attractions in World Showcase at the time because, there was no Norway. Morocco had been in place since 1984, but didn't have an attraction. So World Showcase was still very early on in terms of what it was like. So it was very different at this point. Everything wasn't in place the same way.
But Hansel could find no berries.
That for nothing husband of mine.
But I just like seeing these little glimpses of things that are no longer at EPCOT, and beyond just the rides that are extinct, you have just this little puppet show where, Hansel's mom is letting him have it there. And then we spend a little time in the Germany Pavilion, which beyond having fewer beer drinkers in line, doesn't look that different from what we might have seen today. I mean, you can obviously clothes people wearing. You can obviously tell this is not today's EPCOT Center, but we have a glimpse of Germany as we fade out and head into a performance by a live band at the American Gardens Theater. And my dad was a big fan of live music like this. You can tell because whenever there's a live band performing or anything similar, he always shoots it in home video. I have multiple examples like this. Even like the puppet show, that is something a lot of people might not shoot, but he focused in on for sure. But so we're going to have a few minutes of this performance by the most notable thing being a full orchestra, not your typical kind of small band that we might see more often. I'm not talking about bands that play at the special concert series. Just even when you have like the Broadway and everything, there's nothing on this scale. It's rarely seen here at EPCOT. And they look very young, so I wonder if this is some sort of traveling band, but I don't have any background on that. But, a nice way to spend the evening at EPCOT. So while they play, I do want to mention, if you are enjoying this video, please like it on YouTube. Leave a comment. Let me know how it is. And subscribe to the channel. I haven't posted that many videos beyond, of course, the way it started was a way to post episodes of my podcast, the Tomorrow Society podcast. So now, posting these, I'm still just trying to grow the channel, post more videos, and then do some different things like this audio commentary as we go along. And they're really rocking out now, so this is pretty cool. But also the Tomorrow Society podcast, I do one-on-one interviews with authors, filmmakers, former Disney Imagineers, talking about history of the parks, including EPCOT, and some current news. It's a lot of fun. I've done 125 episodes in the past 5 years. check it out, at all your major podcast providers. And now I will finish this commercial and get back to this band who are just rocking it out here right now at EPCOT Center. We're having a lot of fun with them as we prepare to get ready for the final big presentation of the evening. There's our shot of Spaceship Earth. And as you can hear, we are going to see this evening's performance of Laserphonic Fantasy. Pretty cool. I'm glad that I have so much footage from this show, which was the third incarnation of the nighttime show at EPCOT Center. This opened in the summer of '84, was still playing here, and it went through January of 1988, which is when Illuminations started. And I know a lot of us who went to Disney World at this time or a bit later kind of think of Illuminations as like the original great EPCOT nighttime show. And that did lift it a lot. Like, for example, the Laserphonic Fantasy used the music from Festivals Down Dorsey, a lot of that music. But this was done with synthesizers. And the version for Illuminations was done with a full orchestra, which makes a big difference. And you can see, though, here, we got some fountains and everything, but there are some lasers, which are things that there were multiple breakthroughs in the use of lasers that happened with Laserphonic Fantasy. So at the time, a lot of what we're seeing here, which might seem a bit quaint compared to projection mapping and just Illuminations reflections of Earth and how cool that was still at the time pretty impressive for what you would see typically on a nighttime show, which is normally kind of your standard fireworks, where instead we've got, multiple fountains, fireworks, syncing with music. This might not be on the level of any of the shows that followed it, but at the time was an upgrade over the earliest shows like the Carnival de Lumiere, and just moves forward where it kind of bridges that up to Illuminations. And it's interesting, too, that Illuminations had so many different versions. You had Illuminations 25, multiple versions of that, which brought in Remember the Magic, which was the big theme from the 25th anniversary of Walt Disney World that continued for a while. And then, of course, you had Holiday Illuminations and a bunch of versions leading up to Illuminations Reflections of Earth, which is the one I know the best because it played essentially for 20 years, going before Epcot Forever took over, and in the future, Harmonious. And now you can see the fireworks really starting to pick up here. It's not just as much just fountains and music. The fireworks are, it's a solid show. I'm glad that we do have that island kind of blocking part of it from us, but we are able to see a decent amount from this view because there's no one standing in front of us. And you notice all the smoke. I remember being younger and it still is the way now, but especially then, the fireworks just led to so much smoke, especially on nights when it was really windy. So that would be where you start out and like, oh, the sky's clear, we can see everything. And about halfway through to the end, all you saw was a giant collection of smoke. And you can see that's really starting to be the case here. And I know that fireworks don't film that well, especially when you're talking about a camcorder from the 1980s. Yes, now with your 4K HD cameras, that there are some really good footage of Epcot Forever and all the main kind of fireworks shows, Happily Ever After, and even Illuminations Reflections of Earth. That's not going to be the case here, though I do appreciate that we're able to see as much as we can a decent view. Everything's a little blurry here, but that's also just part of the nature of when you're shooting fireworks. You're not going to get a super clear view, regardless, not even having to do with the fact that how much smoke is there. So, but I really like the way that we have kind of a clear indication of how the music connects to the fireworks show. And of course, we are now starting to near the grand finale. You can see some lasers cutting in there, along with a lot of the fireworks that are really starting to take over. We're in that kind of final segment of what's here. And so as I look back at just kind of all these clips, of course, there's part of me that wants to think about it and go, oh, It's too bad that we don't have an entire home video of all of Horizons or all of World of Motion or some other things, which I know are out there. You can definitely find those, especially with Horizons, with what the retro Disney World guys did. But it's still cool for me to have it all kind of in one big segment, where it's basically, here's what our day was when we went to EPCOT Center when I was 10 years old in June of 1986. It covers essentially pretty much everything we did, and my dad really shot a lot from this trip. I mean, a good hour and a half of footage. And so in the future, I'm going to be posting a lot more clips from the Magic Kingdom, which was the second of 2 days where the filming happened on this trip. If you haven't seen them already, there are a lot of videos from earlier in the trip, all of these, but also from a trip to the Disney MGM Studios in May of 1989, or right around the opening there, and also trips in 1978 and 1980 and other years. So, and a bunch from 1998, the first year of Disney's Animal Kingdom. And if you like a video like this, I may go back and do commentary on some of those, because I find this really fun to do. So please let me know in the comments, or follow me on social media, wherever you want to find me, to say if you think these are enjoyable. Is it good to go back and kind of dig in and for me to provide some context on these home movies, which this trip is from 34 years ago. So I'm not able to remember as much, but I still appreciate kind of looking back and going, okay, this is what we did. I did see this on this year. I saw Laserphonic Fantasy, for example. There are so many things that we experienced at that time that my memory wouldn't automatically get. But because I have all this footage, it's not just about being able to put them on this YouTube channel. I love presenting this to you, but I also just appreciate the look back at EPCOT Center in its early years. It was an incredible park. I really loved visiting it as a kid. I was not bored. I found it to be fascinating. I love so many of the attractions, especially in Future World. And while I know the park has changed so much and is not going to go backwards, I hope that spirit remains with some of the changes that Disney will be making in the near future. The park's going to continue to get very different, but I'm glad that I still have this perspective on what it was like in the early days. Thank you so much for watching this full video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you again soon.